Huge win for immigrants. U.S. immigration update brings major relief. March 2026.
If you or someone you love has been waiting years for a green card, living in fear of deportation, or separated from family members because of immigration status, what I'm about to share in the next few minutes could literally change your life. We're talking about the biggest immigration relief package in over a decade that just dropped in March 2026, and millions of people have no idea this is happening right now. I'm going to break down exactly who qualifies, what benefits you can claim immediately, and the critical deadlines you absolutely cannot afford to miss. But here's the thing. There's a specific provision buried in this update that immigration attorneys aren't talking about publicly yet, and it could fast-track your case by up to 60%. Stick with me until the end, because I'm going to reveal the 3 documents you need to gather right now, today, before this window closes. Whether you're a dreamer, an H-1B worker stuck in limbo, a family waiting for reunification, or an asylum seeker who's been in the system for years, there is something in this update specifically for you. So grab a pen, turn off distractions, because what you're about to learn in the next 10 minutes could be the answer you've been praying for. Let's get into it. So let's dive right into it. March 2026 is shaping up to be a pivotal month for immigration in the United States, and the relief that's coming is nothing short of monumental. We're talking about policy changes that could reshape the entire immigration landscape, bringing relief to people who've been stuck in bureaucratic limbo for years, families who've been separated, and skilled workers who've been contributing to the American economy but living in constant uncertainty. Now, before we get into the specifics, I want to give you the big picture here. Immigration has always been a hot-button issue in American politics, right? We've seen administrations swing back and forth, policies get implemented and then reversed, and millions of people caught in the middle, just trying to build better lives for themselves and their families. But what we're seeing now represents a fundamental shift in how the United States is approaching immigration, and the implications are massive. The first major component of this relief package addresses one of the most painful aspects of the current immigration system, and that's the backlog. We're talking about millions of cases sitting in queue, people waiting sometimes a decade or more for their cases to be heard, for their applications to be processed, for their futures to be determined. The emotional toll this takes on families is immeasurable. Imagine living in a state of limbo for years, not knowing if you'll be able to stay in the country where you've built your life, where your kids go to school, where you've established your career. Well, the new measures being rolled out include a comprehensive plan to drastically reduce these backlogs. The government is allocating significant resources to hire more immigration judges, more USCIS officers, and to implement technology solutions that will streamline the entire process. We're talking about artificial intelligence-assisted case management systems, digital filing processes that eliminate paperwork delays, and regional processing centers that will distribute the workload more evenly across the country. Early projections suggest this could cut processing times by up to 60% for certain categories of applications. That's not just a number on a spreadsheet. That's families getting answers. That's people being able to plan their futures with certainty. But it gets even better. One of the most heartbreaking situations in immigration has always been family separation. We've all seen the stories: parents separated from children, spouses living in different countries, elderly parents unable to join their adult children who are established in the United States. The March 2026 update includes expanded family reunification provisions that are going to change this dramatically. Under the new guidelines, certain categories of family-based immigration petitions will receive expedited processing. We're talking about immediate relatives of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents getting priority treatment. The definition of family members eligible for certain benefits is also being expanded to include extended family members in cases of extreme hardship. This means that more families will be able to stay together, more children will grow up with both parents, and more elderly parents will be able to spend their golden years with their families instead of a loan in another country.
There's also significant relief coming for people who entered the United States as children. We're talking about dreamers, DACA recipients, individuals who've known no other home but America. The new measures include a pathway that provides more permanency and stability for this population. While I can't get into all the legal specifics because some details are still being finalized, what I can tell you is that this represents the most substantial protection for dreamers we've seen in years. We're talking about provisions that would protect them from deportation more robustly, give them access to more federal benefits, and potentially create a clearer pathway to permanent residency and eventually citizenship. Now let's talk about employment-based immigration, because this is huge for the economy and for millions of skilled workers who are contributing to American innovation and growth. The current system for employment-based visas has been a nightmare of caps, quotas, and per-country limits that create massive inequities. Highly skilled professionals from certain countries have been waiting decades, literally decades, for green cards, while doing everything right, paying taxes, contributing to their communities, and living in constant uncertainty. The March updates include substantial reforms to the employment-based immigration system. First, there's a recapturing of unused visa numbers from previous years. This is critical because due to administrative inefficiencies, thousands of visa numbers have gone unused over the years, even while people were desperately waiting for them. By recapturing these numbers and making them available, we're going to see a significant acceleration in processing for employment-based categories. There's also relief for spouses and children of primary employment-based visa applicants. Under the current system, these family members count against the numerical caps, which is frankly absurd and creates unnecessary delays. The new provisions exclude certain family members from counting against these caps, which means more visas available for primary applicants and faster processing overall. For those on temporary work visas, like H-1B, there's relief coming in the form of more flexibility. The new rules expand the ability to change employers, extend the maximum duration of stay in certain circumstances, and provide more protections against exploitation. We've heard too many stories of workers being taken advantage of because they're tied to a specific employer and fear losing their status. These new protections create more balance and give workers more power to advocate for themselves. Another absolutely critical component of this relief package addresses humanitarian immigration. Asylum seekers and refugees have faced increasingly difficult barriers in recent years, with processing times stretching into years and approval rates fluctuating wildly depending on which administration was in power. The March 2026 updates include provisions to restore and strengthen the asylum system. We're talking about additional resources for asylum officers, creation of specialized courts to handle asylum cases more efficiently, and most importantly, restoration of certain protections that had been rolled back in previous years. There's also recognition that people fleeing violence, persecution, and humanitarian crises deserve to have their cases heard fairly and in a timely manner. The new measures include safeguards to ensure that asylum seekers have access to legal representation, that their cases are evaluated based on established legal standards, and that vulnerable populations receive appropriate accommodations during the process. Now, I know some of you watching this might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but when does it actually take effect? What's the timeline? These are critical questions, and here's what we know. The implementation is happening in phases throughout 2026. Some provisions took effect immediately in early March, particularly those related to processing improvements and technology upgrades. Other provisions, especially those requiring regulatory changes, will be phased in over the coming months, with full implementation expected by the end of the year. For those of you who have applications pending, who are waiting for interviews, who are in removal proceedings, this is what you need to know. Stay informed about which specific provisions apply to your case. The USCIS website is being updated regularly with detailed information about how these changes affect different categories of applicants. If you're working with an immigration attorney, which I always recommend, make sure you're in close contact with them so they can advise you on how to take advantage of these new provisions. Let me address something that I think is really important here. These changes didn't happen in a vacuum. They're the result of years of advocacy by immigrant rights organizations, by affected communities, by legal experts who've been pointing out the flaws in the system, and frankly, by economic necessity. The United States needs immigrants. The data is crystal clear on this. Immigrants start businesses at higher rates than native-born Americans. They contribute billions in taxes. They fill critical gaps in the workforce, from healthcare to technology to agriculture. This isn't just about compassion and human rights, although those are absolutely central. It's also about the practical recognition that immigration is good for America. But beyond the economics and the policy details, let's talk about what this means on a human level. I've read so many stories over the years that just break your heart. Parents who missed their children's graduations because they couldn't risk traveling. Talented professionals who are overqualified for their jobs because they're stuck in visa limbo. Elderly parents who spent their final years alone instead of with their families. Young people who grew up American in every way except on paper, living in fear that they could be sent to a country they don't even remember. These new measures address real human suffering, and that cannot be overstated. There's also an economic justice component to this that's worth discussing. When people are stuck in temporary status for years, they can't fully participate in the economy. They can't buy homes as easily. They can't invest in their education without certainty. They can't start businesses or take career risks. By providing more stability and certainty, these measures don't just help individual immigrants, they help entire communities and the broader economy. When people can plan for their futures, they invest, they spend, they grow roots, and everyone benefits. Now, I want to be realistic with you, because I think that's important. These are significant positive changes, but they don't solve every problem in the immigration system. There are still going to be challenges. Implementation of any major policy shift is complicated, and there will likely be bumps along the road. Some categories of immigration cases may still face delays. There are still numerical caps and limitations built into the system. And of course, immigration policy can change with political winds, which means that advocacy and engagement remain critical. For those of you watching who are immigrants, or who have family members affected by these issues, here's my advice. Document everything. Keep copies of all your applications, correspondence, receipts, everything. Stay informed through reliable sources, official government websites, reputable immigration attorneys, and established immigrant advocacy organizations. Be wary of scams, because unfortunately, whenever there are major immigration changes, scammers come out of the woodwork, promising things they can't deliver. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Also, know your rights. Regardless of your immigration status, you have certain rights in the United States. You have the right to remain silent if questioned by immigration authorities. You have the right to speak with an attorney. You don't have to sign documents you don't understand. Educate yourself, educate your family members, and don't be afraid to assert your rights respectfully and appropriately. For those watching who aren't directly affected by immigration issues, I want to encourage you to stay informed and engaged. These issues affect all of us, whether we realize it or not. The person who rings up your groceries, the nurse who cares for your aging parent, the tech worker who designed the app you use every day, the farm worker who harvested your food. These are often immigrants, and the policies we implement affect real human beings with dreams, families, and aspirations just like anyone else. Looking ahead, there's reason for cautious optimism. The March 2026 updates represent the most substantial immigration relief we've seen in over a decade. They address real problems in the system, They provide tangible benefits to millions of people, and they recognize the fundamental truth that immigration is part of America's DNA and essential to its future prosperity. But the work doesn't end here. There are still larger structural reforms needed. We still need comprehensive immigration reform that addresses the root causes of irregular migration, that creates more legal pathways for people to come to the United States, that invests in immigration courts and processing infrastructure, and that treats immigrants with the dignity and respect they deserve. These March updates are a significant step in the right direction, but they're just that, a step. The journey continues.